Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the TFT Perspective. Viewers, the fires in India's northeast are repeatedly growing. It seems to be no end in sight. Just yesterday, we did a program on the controversy looming around the speech made by the Mizoram Chief Minister, Mr. Lal Dhume, in Indianapolis, inside United States, and the never-ending civil war that is ongoing inside Manipur between the Meiteis and the Kuki tribes. It's ongoing since 2022, and it seems to be no end in sight. And now, breaking news coming from slightly northern to Manipur, which is Nagaland. Uh, the NSCN, which is the National Socialist Council of Nagaland, is saying that whatever was discussed in 1997 between the Indian Union and Nagaland, or the 2015 Accords, or the 2017 terms, they've all fallen flat. Basically, three major points were discussed. Remember, back in 2015, these talks were pretty much kept very secret, that how Mr. Modi came about and became a diplomat in the region and solved the issues of the Nagas completely. So three demands were put forward. One was that the Indian Union is supposed to respect a sovereign flag for Nagaland, as well as to recognize the separate constitution of Nagaland, and to basically unite different Naga communities from Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, and other regions, and unite them in Greater Nagaland project, or in short, to make a bigger province rather than having Nagas enforced in a specific geographical location. So now the NSCN has also threatened violence, and has said that we are not going to respect the terms of the framework agreement. Ceasefire is not going to take place later, and they are not giving any guarantees. There are also talks about a third party influence in the region as well. To discuss this issue, we have with us Mr. Vakar K. Kodvi. Sir, back to back news coming from Mizoram. Then there was also an attack in Manipur recently, just yesterday. And now this. It seems to be that these places are intertwined, interconnected, and in the fallout, something big is coming up inside India. What the hell is happening?
I think Indian Northeast or the occupied Northeast, I would say, is very interesting area, and it appears to be a domino effect. I remember when there was Red Storm rising, the Soviet Union was exerting in Afghanistan. A book came next domino. Pakistan was shown as the next domino. Probably the Soviets are going to advance. So I think there is a domino effect taking place in Indian Northeast, and there are historical reasons. And I think before we get into the nuts and bolts of what is happening now, it is just important that we just run through the history of Nagaland. Who are these people? And what was the status of Nagaland at the time of partition of India? And what were the demands put up by Dr. Fizo and other Naga leaders? And who are the current leaders and where things are going from now? If you look at the tribe itself, they claim, and that's I think very vehemently pointed out by their supremo, Thwingaling Muiwa. In one of the interviews with Karan Thapar, he very clearly mentioned that they are 5,000 years old tribes. One, they have long history. They were also called the headhunters in this region. And there was a time, 200 years back, there was cannibalism also. And then, of course, there were conversions. So struggle for Nagaland, I would say, is almost now 100 years old. So it started from the British time. One, they didn't accept the British sovereignty. So they were given status of, let's say, semi-independent areas or tribes. And if you look at as you mentioned, that they are spread all across the Seven Sisters, but specifically Nagaland, where they have the majority, and closer to 90% are Christians. And I'll also touch how all this population became Christian. Then they have substantial presence in Assam, Arunachal Pradesh. Then you come to Manipur. Now you have Kukis and Meiteis mentioned, but there are, I think, 10 to 12% Nagas also. And I think even in Mizoram. And then you go to Myanmar, which is also the area adjacent to Indian Nagaland, is called the Eastern Nagaland. And then we have their Khaplang group is active. We'll talk about it, what are they doing. And both groups actually finally want Nagaland, which is the greater place for the Nagas. Now, the British colonization of subcontinent brought Nagaland under the British Raj, and gradually the American and European missionaries came. So, I think one important name which is now also being discussed in Indian media, they're actually cursing him, is Baptist E.W. Clark, who came basically in I would say the late part of 19th century. So it was I think 1880s, and he stayed there. He built the first church, and then they started conversion. And that's why you find three important states: Nagaland,
Manipur
almost
and
90%.
Mizoram.
Manipur is 50-50, and Mizoram is again I think 87% Christian. And I was looking at some of the Indian media channels saying that this is basically a job of those evangelical Christians, and they put this albatross around our neck and all that. Now, closer to 1947, since Nagas could feel that India is going to be splitted into different independent countries, they came up with their own demand. And I think it is very clearly mentioned that one was that they couldn't be splitted from their half brethren on the Myanmar side. And before that, we had Naga Club. I just forgot to mention there was Naga Club which came up. So it means there was a, I would say, more of a political party emerging. This was in 1930s, and they met the Simon Commission and presented the Naga Memorandum, which was presented by the Naga Club, and they said to leave us alone to determine ourselves as in ancient times. So basically, what today Thungaling Muiwa is saying is, I think the same thing was mentioned by the Naga Club. And in 1946, Naga Club officially took shape into Unified Naga National Council, and then you have the NSCN later on
NSCN,
came.
yes.
And this council was then led by Dr. Fizu, very famous, very flamboyant, leader, and mainly he's the one who kept, armed struggle against India, and throughout his life. And basically, it was only after Bangladesh came in that, Fizu then had to sign the Shillong Accord in 1975, and then I think he died as a sick man. Then, of course, the Naga Socialist National Socialist Council of Nagaland again split into two parts. So
Which
there
is
was
the famous
factions.
IM group.
Yeah.
And there was
So
another
Isaac
group.
Muiwa group. So like Isaac Chishu later on died. Again, very flamboyant. Now we are left with Twingling Muiwa from the old guards. And the Kaplang group was basically the one which was operating from Myanmar. And SS Kaplang also died. And now I think we are having another leader basically who's leading. He's, I think, Konyak. Mr. Konyak, he is basically Lieutenant General, retired Lieutenant General in the Naga Army. So, all told, I think the groups have the same objective, to create a united Nagalim. And as you mentioned, it is to unite all the Naga tribes in different states. So, I think if you look at the accord that you mentioned, probably there was some commitment.
Yes.
But now you have a movement for the cookies, or basically Zo Cookie Chin movement to unite the cookies, and now
Then
you
the
have
Mizos as well in Mizoram.
yeah. Mizos also. So all told, and if you look at their attacks on Indian military, there have been proper war. I think in 60s, in late 50s, 60s, 70s, and at places Indian Air Force, even in Nehru's time, had to go and bomb, basically the capital of Nagaland, Imphal, and Imphal Valley. So all told, I think this is the background of Naga people.
Yeah, so if we look at the history and everything, don't you think that back in 2015, the Indian media portrayed this move by Mr. Moody? They also called it as the Moody Naga talks, which is interesting. They coined it, and they said that it was a big bravado, big success of Mr. Moody as well. We also mentioned in the last episode that the BJP government is making militants out of minority tribes inside Northeast, especially from Hindu Dharma and those areas, especially in Manipur and these areas as well. Don't you think their strategy is, as long as they get the Hindu vote, they don't care about what really happens other than that? Because what you mentioned, the domino effect, we witnessed this happening right after Manipur. The situation now coming from Mizoram and now this. So it's more like, I would say, a response from the united tribes in these areas, especially from the Christian faith, that they're not going to be let off this easy.
I think we look at the Naga Accord framework or Naga framework accord, whatever you call it. This was signed in 2015, I think.
Yes, 2015 was the initial agreement, and later the seven coalition partners, including then governor in Nagaland, signed it back in
Ravi Nair, I think, was the
2017.
one. Yes,
Yes,
yes. So I think maybe it came to closure, or let's say the understanding was the 2017,
yes.
and it was kept secret from the entire Indian public. Even I think,
I mean, the only thing they mentioned was that we have agreed upon a ceasefire.
yeah, and so there was. I think there was a tacit understanding of this greater Nagaland that we'll allow it, and probably India thought that they will let these tribes fight, and so they'll be able to one for achieve internal strife between the tribes. The northeast will remain divided, and then of course India could control. Maybe it was that's why it was called a master stroke, like demonetization, master stroke. So one is that. The other is why the domino effect. I think yesterday we did discuss about the conspiracy theory, which is now I think if you combine Nagaland, which is again Christian, so Cookies, Chin area and Nagaland combines could be a huge area.
This is a huge area.
So it means that you are looking at almost more than half of India northeast and part of Myanmar. And if they're claiming some areas in Bangladesh, I don't agree. I've lived in Bangladesh. Maybe there's one district where there is some presence of cookies. But I think India is now trying to blow it up because Sheikh Hasina said it. But there is some, I think, merit within this, what is happening. But it is also important that Nagas had very strong relationship with the Chinese, always. Because if you look at their, let's say, composition or ideology, one, they are, of course, evangelical
their main
Christians.
party is a socialist party.
Yeah, they are evangelical Christian, but I think their mode of operation is more socialist. And that's why, and there are reports that even, I think, some of the leaders like Dr. Fizo or Kaplang or maybe, Tringalang Muiwa have traveled to China a number of times. And now you combine with, there is also a group that maybe we'll discuss someday later, the Naxals. So Naxals are also...
that was the next question. I was going to come to that.
Yeah.
Like the domino effect, do you think that the Naxalites are going to up the ante against the Indians, seeing that how weak they are in the northeast?
Yeah, because if you look at the Naxal areas, if you come from northeast and cross the Siliguri corridors, you then start with the Naxalites area. Naxal Bari was basically a small village in North Bengal, Indian part of, I would say, West Bengal. And from there, Charu Majumdar, rose up. Basically, it was a class war. The peasants fighting against the landlords or the upper caste, and then it turned into a movement. And at its peaks, it used to affect 163 districts of India. So if you look at eastern seaboard, right from, you have West Bengal, then you come to Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and even in some of the central areas like Madhya Pradesh, then you even come down to south, where you have basically the larger, the Vida Nadu. Some of these areas were also affected. But later on, India does claim that they have been able to, basically, now I think 150,000 acres of land has been given to Indian military to develop a camp. So it means that they can foresee that probably Naxalites are also going to rise. But I think we need a separate program on that. But in a passing reference, Naxals could be the next. And we could be looking at Naxal Republic coming up because people are fed up with the way the Indian elite is dealing with the Adivasis or lower caste people and the way they have been actually destroying and
especially Dalits.
Especially Dalits, yeah. So all told, I think let's see that how let's see the response now coming from the Indian government. Are they going to agree with Tringalang Muiwa? And there's also, I think, important to understand how does Naga, this National Socialist Council operate. So it will be surprising for many that they have technically a prime minister.
Yes.
They have a home minister. So you will, hear names, terms like Kilo Kalonsar or Akko Kalonsar. So these are, some of the senior ministers. They have a regular army. They have a GHQ in Kohima. Then they have a military academy. And they have their own separate army. Naga, that's a national army. And Indian military can't do anything about it. So that's the kind of... Now if you look at occupied Kashmir and compare it, that wherever there is resistance, the Bania would really, just shy away. He would try to compromise. So that's why I always say the banya is either at your feet or at your throat. So this is also important that they are well organized. Now, if you look at Manipur, now you have armed groups in Cookies, and then you have Arambai Tangol created by Amit Shah. So it means that it's a very, very complicated matrix.
Yeah.
Are we initially going to see Nagas
It's
rising?
not just only about what the Indian media is portraying again and again, that a Christian state, a threat of conspiracy. It's more to do with like subnationalism, to even the minute details of subnationalism. In fact, the National Socialist Council of Nagaland is also divided in so many parts. They also have issues with one another as well. So, uh, coming back to the Indian response, what do you see is at fault over here? We have seen multiple times Indians coming up with strange terms or strange, I would say, perceptions when it comes to Northeast. Either they downplay an event or they blow it out of proportion. So, do you think it's a wise strategy to deal with a situation like this that is, slowly building up the powder keg and just requires a match to explode?
I think if you look at India in terms of development and the three corners, I always say look at the three corners. One is of course occupied. The occupied Kashmir forms one corner in the northwest, and now combine it with the Indian Punjab. So this becomes the outer corners or the front line. Let's say states. In the northeast, you have seven sisters mainly, and then you have south, which is basically Dravidian people. You have Tamil Nadu, you have Karnataka, you have although they're called Canadas and maybe Keralites, but generally they're the same stock. And then you have basically Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Lakshadweep Islands, and then you can travel up also Telangana. So these I think three corners have always been, I would say, under stress. One, because in the Hindi heartland everything is hunky dory, so India presents mainly three cities. It's New Delhi's Noida and Gurgaon area around it, or the larger NCR. Then you have Mumbai, and only the posh area they never show Dharvi slum, and then maybe now Bangalore in the Bangalore in the south, and then Chennai or maybe. So this is what is projected for the world. Ambani's, Adani's, billions. But if you look at the outbacks or the areas which are lying on the outer periphery, there's always an
They even
effort.
gave it a term as Bimaru states. I
Yeah,
remember
there
the
were.
term like Bihar and these areas.
Yeah. So Bimaru states is definitely another phenomena, but definitely they would not like to talk about it. Look at the outer periphery of these three corners. One, as you mentioned, they will try to play down any news. They will not discuss it in the mainstream media. So it's only when there is some crisis, and then because people think everything is hunky dory. Moody's 56-inch chest macro man who can solve all the problems. They have a Chankiya Amit Shah. Then they have a Rajnath Singh. Who's the, let's say, defense minister. And then you have Ajit Doval, who is 007, and Jay Shankar, Dr. Jay Shankar. So they are huge guys, 10 feet tall, and they can solve all problems. If you look at inside, I think it's a rotten system. In the northeast, there is also a huge, natural resources, whether it is gas, whether it is minerals, forest, and then
Rubber, oil.
and mostly now exploitation is done by these two big groups like Ambanis and Adanis, and tribes they don't like it. So this is also one of the reasons, and this has been even written by sane Indian writers. Look at books written on North; they always say that these areas have been basically discarded. So if you just go there and basically do loot and plunder of the resources and don't look after, despite that there's I would say highly educated lot in the northeast.
Yes.
Now you look at Manipur, Mizoram, discussed is almost 87% literacy. I was looking at how they manage the traffic, very disciplined people. And then Nagas, again, very educated people. And then they have a very strong diaspora where we found Mr. Lal Duma going there and talking to them, the diaspora in the West. So it means they are much awarer than the rest of it. But they are at time, given. Like I remember during COVID time, they were given name of Chin or Chinkies or something like that, derogatory terms. So in mainstream, since because of their appearance, they can be easily recognized. So at times they'll be related to Mongoloid race or Chinese race, and they'll be, I think, undermined. So all those reasons, I think it's a huge challenge. But Nagaland coming up because they are the most ferocious fighters, well
They
organized.
even swept off the Japanese in World War II. Very
Yeah,
famous in these areas.
yeah. So if you look at their role played as a front line, so they did play their part. So all told, I think India is in for another wave of insurgency, another domino, and we'll have to see what happens in next few weeks, because Thingaling
And it's
Moivia is very
happening
clear.
every day. It's not
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah.
It's happening every day.
At times, although Pakistan is having its challenges in KP and in Balochistan, but at times things are blown out of proportion. If you look at India, daily killings happening within the tribes, especially in the northeast, lynching of Muslims, lynching of Dalits, and then even Indian military being taken to task, whether it is occupied Kashmir or Indian in northeast. I think day before yesterday there was attack by cookies against the CPRF also, and looting of armories. So it appears to be a totally lawless area.
Yeah. So let's see what's the next in the domino effect after Nagaland. That's it for today, folks. Please do leave a like and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much for watching us. Bye bye.